Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 264, entitled Automate All Your Workflows with Bodywork. It was published on Thursday, the 3rd of February, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and in a few minutes' time, I will introduce you to Maciek and Luke so that we can chat about Bodywork. But before then, a very small amount of housekeeping. If you like what we're doing over at WP Builds, I would very much like you to share that. Feel free to share whatever you like, wherever you like. It could be a particular episode, or it could be just the URL, wpbuilds.com. Go around, share it, tell all of your friends who are interested in WordPress. We'd be most grateful. It always helps to get a 5-star review on something like Apple Podcasts. So whatever you feel that you can do, we'd be most grateful. Another thing to do might be to go to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, and over there you can fill out a form and we'll keep you updated when we produce new content. It's got things like our Twitter feed URL and YouTube URL and so on and so forth. So that's wpbuilds.com/subscribe. I always mention at the top of the show our deals page, wpbuilds.com/deals. That's a bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the week. There's loads of offers on there, significant amounts off WordPress-related products, so hosting, themes, plugins, blocks, all of that kind of stuff. wpbuilds.com/deals. And last but by no means least, wpbuilds.social. And I keep saying, yes, that is a URL, wpbuilds.social. It's our Mastodon install, which is a bit like Twitter, but open source. If you'd like to join us over there, it's fairly quiet at the moment, but you never know. If you're fed up with being on social media and being followed around the internet, well, the Mastodon install might be for you. Okay, let's get stuck into the main event today. This is episode 264, Automate All Your Workflows with Bodywork. Like I said, I'm joined by Maciek and Luke from Bodywork, and they're going to tell us what their service does. If you've ever used something like Zapier, then you know roughly what this episode is going to be about. The idea is that you have a service and you'd like to connect it to another service, or you'd like to automate something within a particular service that you find time-consuming, perhaps you find it dull or simply repetitive, and you want to offload that task to some automation software. Well, that's what Bodywork does, but rather than being on the sort of consumer end of things like Zapier is, it's much more to do with web development and web design. So WordPress fits very neatly into that. It can do an awful lot of complicated things. So I think it connects to about 130 different services, many of which you'll have heard of, some of which you may not have done, and it will automate all the tasks for you. The complexity could be incredible. The time savings could be incredible. You've just got to figure out how it all connects together. They've got a fabulous UI, but there's a lot of complexity in here, and the guys today are going to explain how Bodywork works and what it can do for you. I hope that you enjoy the podcast. Hello there, welcome to the WP Builds podcast. You've got to an interview episode today, and really unusually, in fact, I cannot remember the last time I was interviewing two people on one episode, but that is in fact what's happening today. We have with us today Maciek and we have Luke, and they're both from Bodywork. I'm going to ask you, as I often do before the episode begins, if anything during this episode doesn't make sense, if anything during this episode is confusing to you, just hit pause and go to Buddy, BUDDY.works, WORKS. Check it out over there and then come back and hit play and you may be slightly less confused. So first of all, hello there, Maciek. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I mean, it's rainy and the weather is horrible, but apart from that, it's really great.
Where are you in the world that the weather is horrible?
I'm in the center of Poland in the city called Łódź, which means boat city, which is kind of funny because we don't have access to any sea or anything. And It's just a part of kind of boring origin story. But yes, I live in Boat City, and I think the only water that we have now is the one from rain.
It comes from the sky. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
We, living in the UK, are well experienced with rain. And I should also introduce us to Luke. How are you doing, Luke? And where are you
Doing
from?
fine. Hi. Doing fine. I'm based also in Poland, in Krakow. I'm happy that we did start the Polish way, so a bit of complaining, Maciek. Good for us, for sure.
Is that a thing? Are the Polish...
No, I mean, you have to counterpoint your... Yes, actually, yeah.
This this is a typically British trait, is to complain and moan about things. So honestly, this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about the weather and we're going to complain. No, we're not. We're going to talk about Bodyworks because both Maciek and Luke have come on the podcast to talk about this. Like I said, if you'd been to the URL and browsed around a little bit, you would have had some insight into what it is. It's all about CI/CD, and those acronyms may not mean anything to you. You guys, you can interrupt each other as much as you like, or you could hand it over to one another and say, Luke, you handle that, or Maciek, you handle that. But I am just going to simply ask, what is Bodyworks? What does it do?
Okay, so like you mentioned, Body is a CI/CD platform. And like you also said, probably most people don't have a clue what does those acronyms mean. So first of all, the CD in it doesn't mean compact record. Yes, CI/CD
Neither
stands
does it mean
for...
like DVD.
That's true. So CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment or development. And in simpler terms, it just means it's the way we can. It's a philosophy of developing software when we just test every time at every step and we try to automate as much as possible.
Okay, so with the platform itself, why I would imagine that most people listening to this podcast, there's a great crowd of us who we communicate with clients directly, we onboard those clients, and then we build them a website. It's very much a sort of freelancer thing, but also we've got the agency crowd who listen to this as well, people who are working on significantly bigger projects and they've got a great big team. I'm wondering if you could address the concern of, well, why would you need to do this? What's wrong with the way that we've always done things, where we hand around jobs to our team and we develop things and we decide that it's going to be fine, and we talk to the client and they look at a staging server, and once that's all done and everything's happy, we hand it over and we sign the documents to say it's all finished. Why do we need to do things continuously? What's the imperative?
If we are developing a website that needs quite often updates for some reason, because it's evolving quickly, then it's a great place to implement CI/CD, because when we develop something quickly, we don't want to waste our time on constantly checking did our previous fix didn't broke anything at some other place. That's why, thanks to CI/CD and the part when we have to write some test on our end, we can make sure that our website will work correctly, even if we constantly do some updates in the code, we'll change stuff. Then we will be sure that our new features won't break anything from the past.
Yeah, so what Maciek essentially says is that you, by means of CI/CD, the concept itself, and automation, you simply at the end of the day you can get pretty much predictable results of your actions.
Okay, so let's imagine a scenario where I am either a solo or I'm working for an agency or something like that. I'm imagining that everything that you do, because the truth is almost every business on earth can be replicated, but I'm imagining that the offer that you've got is you're taking a really difficult to achieve thing and wrapping it up in a SaaS platform which is straightforward to use. Is that basically it? What you're doing could be done by any individual, but you're making this terribly difficult thing much more straightforward.
I would say yes. This is a really great point, because First of all, we are not the only CI/CD solution out there. On the other hand, most of those tasks can be done on our computers by each developer and so on. But thanks to Buddy, we can first of all, it's so much easier to do. It's in one central point, so every developer will have the same platform. So the results will be the same when we push some change, and we don't have this typical developer problem. It worked on on my machine, and yes, this is Buddy mostly makes it easier. It's like I said, it could be done on other platform. It can be done on developer's computer, but it will be much more difficult. We had to remember about doing those step by steps every time, and and thanks to using Buddy, we just push our changes into our Git repository, and all the things run automatically.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get this bit out of the way first, and obviously this is a WordPress-based podcast, and we'll talk about the specifics of WordPress and how you accommodate WordPress. But I do want to draw attention to the fact that really you're everything to all people, aren't you? It's not just about WordPress. And so just very briefly, because many of the people will be listening to this exclusively using WordPress, and there'll be a whole host of people as well who are using a whole bunch of other technologies and connecting it to different platforms and what have you. Is there any sort of specific use case outside of WordPress? You know, any service that you connect to, any kind of integration that you just want to mention? In other words, tell us about the outside of WordPress stuff that you do as well.
Look, maybe it's your turn for this.
Right. So I would say that WordPress is just a part of what we do and what we do have covered with Buddy, with this platform, because essentially what we do is we lower the entry point to the processes that Maciej mentioned in not merely in the context of WordPress, but I would say the whole web stack that is out there, right? So we are talking all web technologies, web programming languages like say Python, all the PHP, all the JavaScript and related frameworks. In Buddy, you can easily automate the processes that are pretty much, I would say, intricate and at some point would require from the user certain DevOps knowledge by means of really easy drag and drop steps. And through graphical user interface. So I would say there is no limit. I would say that we are only restricted by user's imagination, right? What you need in order to automate in Buddy is I would say working computer, operating system, and Lego pieces, understanding. And that's because the process is that simple.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pinpoint certain gravity point that would pretty much encapsulate, what's there in the platform, because we have more than 130 actions that are integration driven.
Yeah, so, I'm looking at your homepage at the minute, and I see all these logos flying by, and essentially every kind of technology that you could imagine on the web.
Yeah,
so
and
S3, PHP, Python, Heroku. Oh my goodness, it just never stops.
And we are also we are also opening up to mobile developers communities, because they're also big, and I do understand that it's essentially not the very merit of our podcast, but these are also like business-wise, because by the way, I'm the business guy in the company. Also areas that we either have covered or are developing our platform in those directions. And hard to pinpoint one thing, but essentially I would say when you juxtapose us with similar tools that are out there, and they are really great tools in that respect, and I would strongly recommend checking them out. Like Circle CI, Travis, Jenkins, which is more tricky, more difficult, I would say. But the easiness of use is the main differentiator, I would say, and think that I would emphasize strongly, because why we are here, and why Maciek works as a WordPress ambassador at Body. I don't want this podcast to end up as a commercial, so I don't know if we can plunge in this direction, but we believe that Body is so easy that you can utilize the tool as a learning platform for the whole CI/CD automation concept, right? So I would, it's really worth investing your time in CI/CD and automation.
Yeah. One of the things that immediately sprung into my head when I saw Bodyworks for the first time, and I have to confess, the first time I saw it was when you guys had reached out to me, because as I said to you before we clicked record, this is just not an area where I'm personally getting involved. But it kind of felt almost like Zapier, Zapier, that platform which allows you to connect all these different things. And sure enough, if you sat there and you hammered away and really spent a long time developing solutions, you could connect your WordPress form solution to Google Drive, and all of that could be done by you. But if you just look at Zapier and click a few buttons and drag some things into some boxes and click around a little while, it'll do it for you. And it feels a little bit like Bodyworks is that for building anything on anything without it failing and keeping your team all up to date.
Yes, exactly. And yes. And also it's probably quite easy to integrate Zapier with Body, because they have webhooks, so we could connect it. For example, I played with connecting Body with IFTT, so every time I had a successful deployment, Spotify opened and played Eye of the Tiger. It's possible.
That's genius. Oh, that's so good. I love that.
This is the part that Luke mentioned about that only the imagination is stopping us at some point, because with all those great tools out there, we can really connect not only the things that not only the deployments, but we get connected to the real world, because why not?
Okay, so you said, well, one of you said a moment ago that you didn't want this to turn into a commercial, but it's okay. We've got to talk about the product in order to discuss it. So let's deal specifically with the WordPress side of things. And for anybody who, let's take the example of somebody who is fairly seasoned with using WordPress, but they typically go into their hosting company. Maybe they've got a managed WordPress solution or something like that, and they press a button and up pops WordPress, and they fiddle with that, and then they play with it until the client's happy, and then they just hand it over. What is the use case? Why would somebody ever want to spend their time investigating Body? What is it that you do that on the WordPress side that makes their life better?
Okay, so the first thing would be that this person would like to first learn a bit about version control system. For example, Git, because this is the foundation on which the whole CI/CD works. So without version control, it just won't work. So maybe first, maybe a few words about Git.
Yes, please.
Before.
Yep.
Git is nothing else like a long log of all our actions we did in our code. So every time we do a change, we save it into the Git repository, and at any point we can either go back to see how some files changed. We can see who made which change and stuff like this. We can also create branches, so we can work on few features at the same time. This is really great when we have more developers. But like I said, this is our central log of all changes in our code. So if the developer at some point realized that yes, it would be easier for him or for her to start using Git to have this whole history of changes. Like I said, it's really great when we are starting to work with some extra developers, or we have a whole team. And so if we have this, the first step we could do is just automate the deployment. So for example, every time we make a change to some of our files, it will automatically be pushed to production. We don't have to open our FileZilla or any other FTP client. It will just happen in the background, because we can set in Body that every time that there is a change in any of our files in the repository, we push everything to production. And this is the most simple case there can be. We can do the same on staging and on production, but that's all. It's just moving files from our repository into the production. At some point, probably, this developer will also start learning about some new technologies, like using all those JavaScript libraries with NPM, or some PHP libraries with Composer, because this is a natural way of many developers to learn. They start with just with a simple WordPress, and they start to learn new things. And these are the things that we would have to install or run every time before deploying. So we can add one more step in our deployment pipeline. So every time we change something in our repository, we will first run all those scripts we need, and then we push all the results to production. And we don't have to worry about remembering to run some extra tasks. So this would be the first steps of our developer that would like to automate some of his work. Because let's be honest, developers are lazy. I know, because I am a developer too. Yes, and one of the things we love about automation is the fact we don't have to remember about things. We just set it up once and it happens somewhere in the background. We don't have to worry about it. If something goes wrong during the deployment, we will get a notification that something went wrong. But we don't have to constantly look at our, for example, FileZilla to see if all the files went through, because Body will inform us if something went wrong. And if not, we just don't have to even care about that something happened. We just push the things to production, and it's just there.
Yeah. So, okay. So the intention is, and again, I think the Zapier metaphor works kind of well. The idea is that you set up, in your case, the simplest one would be connect a Git repository to the live environment and do things over on Git, and it all gets pushed to live, and you simply don't need to think. The only point you need to think is if something goes wrong, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about how it notifies you and so on. But what's the interface for this then? So those who are familiar with things like Zapier or IFTTT will know how that works. It's very much a sort of UI. You drag things, you push things around, you fill in checkboxes and what have you. I'm imagining that you have got, well, I know because I've looked at the website, but describe how you build this kind of stuff, because obviously you want to strip away the complexity, and so the UI that you've got has to be intuitive. Maybe if you just walk us through that straightforward, simple example of connecting Git and then going live to production and so on. How do you actually do it?
So when we have our repository, we go to our website. First, we just connect our repository by selecting it from the list of all repositories we have on our account, because we can connect them. Then Body will automatically download all the files from the repository into our file system, because it's something like an internal cache, but we don't have to dive into this more. Then we will have a screen with one big button to create your first pipeline. In this first pipeline, we will select an action, probably FTP or SFTP. We will just add credentials to our server. it would be also a good thing to select which files we don't want to push, because, for example, we don't want to push the folder with node modules or something like this. It's up to us. And that's all. We just can click then this button like run pipeline, and it will just run.
So the pipeline is the sort of wrapper term for all the things that you're doing, and you can then drag a whole bunch of other things into the pipeline. And obviously, the more that you drag into the pipeline, the more complex the scenario is, and the more things that it can do. So you've given us a very basic one. Tell us about some of the sort of hidden goodies that a typical WordPress user might want to be dragging into their pipeline and modifying. You can optimize things in BodyBoss. So, for example, you'll take care of minifying the JavaScript and so on, and also do things like compressing images, which really extraordinary. So, tell us about some of those things.
So yes, first of all, we can we have some optimization tools, and we have some testing tools, which are also quite interesting. You mentioned the minification of images. It is a cool feature, but in terms of WordPress, it won't work as good, because it will only optimize the images we have in our repository and not the images we have on the whole website.
Got it.
Because it's in the WP content folder. But I would say those test actions are really interesting. For example, we have a Google Lighthouse score, so we can add a step in which we test if our Lighthouse score didn't drop because of our changes, and if it did, maybe we should either just notify developers with a warning, or maybe stop the deployment, because obviously we did something wrong. And currently this is something very important, because we know how Google looks at the website speed. So this is the thing that really a lot of developers should add into their pipelines. We have a great action to compare how the website looked before and after the deployment.
Yeah, and I think that would be notable for WordPress developers for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so we can, for example, have a list of the most important websites we have, web pages we have, to check if nothing broke after our small change that should not break anything, but we know how it happens. We know how it happens. Yes, this small little change that just had to like make our font a bit bigger, like destroyed the whole website. It happens, and thanks to this visual comparison action, we can see it, and when we see that something went wrong, again we can stop the deployment, which is great, because we don't want to push something like this on production. I would also say there is a very useful action for clearing Cloudflare cache, because many developers are using Cloudflare, and it would be great that after deploying some changes, we would automatically clear the cache without having to go into Cloudflare. And it's easy. We just select an action, connect it with our account, and everything will happen in the background. So those are the actions that comes to my head from when we talk about those simple ones. But of course we can start adding all those tests, because we can, but this is something for more experienced developers. There are so many ways we can test our code, and they will probably add those steps also before deploying it to production.
I want to draw attention to the pricing page, and actually not for the purposes of pricing in this case, although we'll come to that a little bit later. So this is body.works/pricing, because it's actually the pricing and features page. They're both wrapped up in the same page there. and you'll get a real sense by looking at that page, the sort of level that you can go to, because you've got a list of the sort of different pipelines that you can add, and obviously, you know, it's a pricing table, so some things are included on certain tiers and what have you. But the range and the depth and the amount of different things that you can do is extraordinary. There is so much in there. It's kind of it's almost too much to take in, actually. There's a lot in there. So when you said a minute ago that the sky is the limit, on a podcast like this, it's going to be almost impossible to describe the unique, crazy, interesting things that you could get up to. But if you do just pause, go to body.works/pricing and have a look around on there, you will very quickly get an understanding of exactly what's possible, because it's hundreds of different things. I think you said 130 things, and they range...
And growing.
Yeah, and growing. And they are...
We release on a weekly basis.
Right. Yes, yeah. That's one of the UVPs on your website, isn't it? That you sort of update these things all the time as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the go and have a look at that page, and you will be staggered at what is there. With that, how long have you guys... how long has Bodyworks been around?
We've been around since... end of 2015 and like 2016.
Okay.
So a couple of years now.
Yep.
Yeah, still bootstrapping and doing well, making ends meet. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I would basically, if you were trying to get me over the barrier of signing up for this, first of all, I'd need to know that there was going to be some benefit. And hopefully, during the last 20 minutes or so, you've described scenarios where people think, yeah, actually, I can see that I would make use of that. But the second hurdle that I would need to get over would be education. I would need to be guided through this process, because... all right, it's you guys are developing it, and it's probably second nature to you, and you'd watch somebody like me using it, and you'd be tutting and going, oh, my God, why doesn't he just... But I would need to know that you were there to help me, to allow me to learn the platform, that there were tutorials and assistance and support and all of that. So can you speak to us about guidance and help that you provide to make the platform more usable than if we were just told, there it is, get on with it?
Maybe I will start with my journey, because I was a client of Buddy too, and I remember that Buddy was one of my first CI/CD platforms ever. So I remember that I tried also GitHub Actions and stuff like this, and I had problems using it just like this. It was too complicated. There was a lot of problems. And then I signed up to Buddy, and everything was just so simple, just like that. So the good news is that I think that for developers with even the basic understanding of Linux, of CLI, Buddy should not cause any problems, and it would be so easy to understand for them. But you mentioned that, as you mentioned, not everyone is a developer. And here, this is something that we are constantly building. We are still adding more and more guides. We are trying to do more webinars. We are showing different scenarios, how you can use Buddy. For example, we had the chance to show how to create static websites together with Stratic. We had a great webinar together with Kinsta on creating the perfect deployment flow. And currently, we are working on a webinar about using Git Updater with Andy Fragan. So even this, you can see how many scenarios there are, and there are much more planned already. But yeah, this is something that we will be still constantly work on. We will try to add more and more guides, tutorials, just to make it easier for everyone to start their adventure.
Do you offer support within the platform? So, for example, do you have like chat support if I bang my head against something and it doesn't work, or is it an email-based system, or what's going on?
We have the dedicated support that works pretty much 24/7. Obviously, there are some basic SLAs under that, but if should any user have issues with the platform, we usually answer within 1 hour. So, and for that purposes, I hope that I may drop names of other companies. We use Intercom, and it works well. So there's a great group of dedicated people that handles our support, and we do not differentiate. So if you come to us with your free plan, or you are a big enterprise customer, because we operate within like this scope, we are from SMBs up to government agencies and really big enterprise businesses. We try to be as flexible as possible and answer within this 1 hour. But as Maciej mentioned, and Nathan, I really dig this Zapier or Zapier. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Either is fine, yeah.
Natural for us to say Zapier, because
that's what I
resembles
say.
other Polish word, which is kind of vulgar, by the way.
Okay.
But that's not the reason I dig this comparison. I would say that because I would obviously. There has to be a certain level of knowledge. You have to, at least when you start using tools and you say invest time in being WordPress developer, right? You know what you are aiming at least, or you know what your results at the end of the day should be, right? So in Body, the steps that are to be designed by a developer, by user, are so intuitive that you kind of the entry point is lower to, I would say, to zero, and at the same time the tool is robust enough to grow as you experience automation, as you get more and more experience within the whole CI/CD concept. And that's feedback we've been getting from our customers, by the way, that they can just open the Body account to a newcomer, junior guys, and they start learning with the tool. So it's also, I do believe that to a certain extent we democratize the whole DevOps space, which is kind of difficult to approach for a developer, for people that are starting really high level with, for example, CMS systems, or are using lightweight JavaScript technologies, right? So I do hope it doesn't sound boastful that there's that the entry point is reduced to zero, but I guess it's worth a try to see for yourself, because obviously we are talking with a certain context, right? And we've seen the platform. We are developing Body by means of Body, so maybe we lack this distance. I don't know.
The some of the sort of screenshots that I'm looking at really do sort of bring that home. You basically click on things, and then other options appear which would be compatible with those things, and then you click on those things and then fill in the details for those things, and then other things emerge because of what you did just then. And essentially it's like a linear structure. You start at the top, work your way down, and by the time you've reached the bottom, hopefully everything is working. Do you have any of these pipelines kind of pre-built out, typical ones that people are using all the time? Can you, rather than having to build certain things, do you have ones that you can just say, actually, that sounds perfect, let's just click a button and then connect the dots and it just works?
You've nailed it, because we are working on that. We are working on templates that will allow our users or newcomers to the platform kick off easier. But I would say the configuration usually takes 5 minutes time.
Yeah,
Maciek, am I correct?
Yes, I think so, because this was the thing about which we were we were talking internally about creating documentation for. We were talking mostly about those JavaScript static site generators, and we realized how similar all those would be, because they're mostly need two actions. First is for building the site, which is normally something like run the command called npm run build, and the second action would be to deploy to the place where we want. So it can be either our server, or it can be, for example, Netlify or some other place. And that's all. These are two actions, and the only thing that can change is, for example, where do we want to deploy it.
Yeah, I get it. So
it's as easy as making a sandwich. So essentially, it's a question whether you wish to have your own sandwich or have it done by someone else.
That's right. Yeah.
It's kind of easy.
You have to decide
bread and butter stuff, right?
Decide what the filling is going to be, and then go for it. Yeah. The one of the things that I'm curious about is whether or not there's an option to. I mean, obviously, you would love from the result of this podcast that many people came knocking on your door and said, "Can I give this a go? This is intriguing to me. I've never played with this before. I'd like to give it a go." And do you have options for people to just play around for a while? Maybe a free tier or something like that.
We have free tier that is free forever, and pretty much would cover your daily freelancer's work, I would say. And then if you want to go pro, we have this pro plan that starts at a certain level, but for the learning experience and for understanding the whole concept itself, like the concept behind the platform and other platforms out there, and the whole CI/CD concept, right? I would say the free plan would be a way to go and a place to start with or start from, and you can stay forever on free plan, by the way. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the pricing page that I mentioned earlier. You've already had the URL. So the free plan is, well, obviously it costs no dollars per month. You're constrained to 5 projects, 120 of the pipeline runs per month, 512 megabytes of cache storage, gigabyte of RAM, 2 CPUs, and so on and so forth. And then we've got different options beyond there. If you've played with that and you feel, actually, this is saving me a bucket load of time and I'm really enjoying this, you've got a pro plan, $75 a month, 20 projects, and all the other figures that I just mentioned are bigger. And then hyper plan, $200 per month again, but at this point we're on to unlimited projects. So if you're an agency, this feels like squarely where you'd be at.
Most agency go for that.
The hyper one, yeah. Unlimited pipeline runs, basically a boatload more thrown in. And then it's curious, on-premise solution. What's that about?
On-premise solution is just a just is quote unquote, right? It's the enterprise version of Body, because when you are developing solutions like Body and you are providing them to bigger and bigger players as you proceed up the market from I did mention the SMB segment, right? And when you start growing, you go into more corporate world. The compliance matters start to kick in. All the security aspects, and certain customers just wish to have Body installed on their own infrastructure. So in that respect, pricing is a bit different because it's based on the number of seats, right? So you pay for the seat, and usually it's a plan. Majority of our customers are cloud driven, so they opt for either free through pro to hyper plans. The on-premises are for the biggest players out there, or the ones that really need to have everything behind their own firewalls. Right.
Yeah, got it. So it's your enterprise a la carte.
That's the enterprise version of Body.
Yeah. Okay. So if you outgrow the hyper plan, you've got the option to look at the enterprise on-premises plan.
You can always because we try to be. And I do believe that we are as flexible as possible. So if you were opting for something aching to pro plan but still not hyper, just get in touch with us on support, and our customers do it, and then we figure out the best solutions for them. Say same number of projects as in pro plan, but maybe more cache storage.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I've also seen, because we are now currently on a daily basis used by tens of thousands of developers. We are talking around 2,000 companies altogether, right? So it's quite a lot. And I've seen also plenty of freelancers going from free plan to pro plan because they have more projects to cover in a certain month, and then coming back to the free plan for the daily work. And it's still fine with us.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything. If you go and have a play around and you feel it's going to save you some time, then the money's well spent. The one of the things that I always ask, because everybody always tells me, why didn't you ask them this? Is what's kind of coming down the roadmap, on the roadmap, I should say. You mentioned that you're adding new things every week, and I know that the information that you give me now will obviously go stale. But just for the people who are listening to this episode right off the bat. You got any insight into some exciting new things coming towards the end of 2021?
So currently we'll be opening up to iOS developers community, and we are in the process of beta testing of these new features. From this business perspective, I would gladly see us closing 2021 with nice share of our customers using those features. And also, Maciek, I guess what's worth mentioning here are dynamically created staging environments.
Yes, so it's sandboxes, how we call it.
Yeah, that's for our own.
And this is one of my favorites because this is a really cool part of working here. I have access to some stuff that is not publicly available, and sandboxes are really cool. We can just create our own staging server in a matter of minutes, seconds, and it will be working. We can run it. We can do some tests on it, and when we don't need it, we just close it and run it again when we will need it. So this is one of, to be honest, this is one of my favorite features, and I really can't wait when it will go public forever.
That is nice. Yeah, that's really nice. So quite a lot coming up. Obviously, there's a lot there. I feel that on a 40-minute podcast, we really can't do justice to what it is that is possible. But again, just drawing parallels to what Zapier can do, you imagine the literally millions of possible combinations of things that you could do. On the Zapier side, connecting SaaS products to other SaaS products. On the web development side of things, it really feels like Body is able to do that. Your very best way of doing that is to go check it out, body.works. And as I said, if you want to go and check that out, you did mention that there was webinars that you were putting together, but we didn't mention the URL for that. So just append webinars to body.works. So body.works/webinars, and you'll be able to go and check those out. And it sounds like there's a lot of those coming. From my part, I think I've asked all of the questions that I wish to ask, but I also want to give you an opportunity in case I horrendously missed anything. I'm just going to ask you one at a time. So we'll go for Maciek to start with. Anything that we missed that you wish we have covered?
No, I think that we have covered everything. I really loved the Zapier parallel, because this is something that really greatly describes us, and it's also one more metaphor that I can use, because when I do some webinars, I always either tend to call it Lego blocks, or when I go for the WordPress community, I say it's something like Gutenberg/Elementor for CI/CD. And here we can also go with the Zapier metaphor.
Well,
so,
I'll tell you what,
I think that
it's the first time finishing a podcast where somebody's ever learnt anything from me. So that's really great. And Luke?
I'm good.
Okay.
It's been really worthwhile. I hope the listeners will dig this very episode, and we'll see each other when new events from the WordPress community will start popping up after this pandemic.
And we want
right?
those so badly, yeah. Again, just before we go, just another thing just occurred to me, which is kind of going to ask another question. I have a few friends who are, in inverted commas, experts at Zapier. You know, they've got to the point where they are so ludicrously good at using it that they have made a business out of Zapier. In other words, you go to them and say, I would like to achieve these things, and I can't be bothered to figure it out, or I don't have the expertise to figure it out. Please, will you do that for me? And I wondered if you had any plans for that kind of thing, you know, a Bodyworks experts marketplace or anything.
I would say it's kind of part of already existing business plan, because we do have companies that started using us, and I don't know if we could call them body experts, but by all means DevOps or automation experts that are utilizing body for the sake of their own customers. But surely this is something worth implementing, body champions, right?
Yeah, there you go, body champions. Yeah, perfect. Okay, literally the last thing I'm going to ask. Is there a better place to reach both of you should people be interested in speaking to you personally? That could be an email address or a Twitter handle, or maybe you don't want to share any of that and you want to be left well alone. But we'll go for Maciek first. Where could we contact you?
The best way would be to find me on Twitter. My handle is. I hope that it will be wrote down, because
I will write it down.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's Palmiak -FP. And this is the best way to contact me. I have always my direct messages open. So like I said, this is the best place. You can just ask me about anything related with WordPress, with CI/CD, and I really always love to answer things like
Thank
this.
you. And Luke?
And myself, I'm available obviously on LinkedIn, being the old school guy, right? And also you can catch me on Luke. This is kind of easy. Luke at Bodyworks.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We've gone over time, but I think it was very, very well worth it. I really appreciate talking to us today. Certainly teaching me an awful lot and getting me into something new that I haven't really spoken about before. Go check out Bodyworks. Contact the guys if you've got any questions. And thank you for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan.
It was really great.
It was a pleasure.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. Really nice to speak with Maciek and Luke. We were on to some new territory today, weren't we? Bodyworks taking a lot of the dull, complicated, boring, and frankly, difficult things to do, and hopefully making them easier and less time consuming. They can just go on in the background. Hopefully that was an interesting episode. If anything sparked your curiosity, don't forget to reach out to the guys. We're going to put all the links in the show notes. Just go to wpbuilds.com and search for episode number 264. Also, while you're there, why not subscribe? wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And don't forget, we will be back on a Monday. We do our live show This Week in WordPress, myself and some notable WordPress guests, every Monday, 2 p.m. UK time at our live URL, which, as you might expect, is wpbuilds.com/live. We'll be there 2 p.m. every Monday, and then we release that the next day. But if you don't get any of that, we'll be back on Thursday for another podcast episode. Okay, all that it remains for me to do is fade in some cheesy music, wish you a very safe and happy week, and I'll say bye-bye for now.